Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you've submitted a comment request that has been received by administration, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. If the meeting is recessed, callers will be put on hold until the meeting reconvenes, with the exception at noon where callers will be asked to call back in. This helps with call quality. Please note this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask all attendees to please mute their devices to reduce disruptions to the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the MGA Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. And Deputy Reeve Clausen has let me know that he's just engaged in a SEWA executive meeting and he will be in and out this morning. He will join us as soon as possible. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Laprice. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry. I don't even have my eScribe open, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Anyone who doesn't have eScribe open, now is a great time.
I voted already.
Yeah, excellent. Motion is carried. My apologies for that. Does anybody have any notices of motion? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item 3.1, bylaw 2024-18.
Good morning, Council. Jessica Russell with Planning and Development Services, presenting bylaw 2024-18 to establish electoral boundaries in Wheatland County. Administration initiated review of the electoral boundaries at the February 13th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. At the March 28th Committee of the Whole meeting, the committee directed administration to proceed with the process of amending the electoral boundaries bylaw. At the May 7th regular meeting, Council accepted the terms of reference for the project, which outlines a process for the electoral boundaries review, including public consultation, advertising, and implementation. Following acceptance of the terms of review, the electoral boundaries bylaw and associated maps were drafted and uploaded to the county website. Notice of a proposed bylaw was circulated to county residents by regular mail. 3 open houses were held to provide opportunities for public consultation through in-person information sessions with residents. The open houses were held from June 10th to 12th in 3 locations in communities throughout the county. No submissions were received at or following the open houses. Oh, sure. Notice of the public hearing of bylaw 2024-18 was sent in accordance with the MGA. Administration did not receive any submissions. The bylaw received first reading and a public hearing was held for the bylaw at the July 2nd, 2024 meeting. In accordance with the MGA, the proposed bylaw must be advertised in order to notify residents the date of the public hearing and to establish a 60-day petition period. This petition period is provided to allow residents the opportunity to prepare, distribute, and submit a petition regarding the amendment prior to third reading of the bylaw. The petition period began July 2nd, 2024 and concluded August 24th. No petition was received during the petition period. Administration recommends approval as per the motions provided. This concludes the presentation of bylaw 2024-18. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? I do have a question for administration, and I referenced it before. Just looking at when the bylaw will come into effect and recognizing that typically a bylaw comes into effect upon third reading. But my understanding from previous training had been that an electoral boundaries bylaw comes into effect at the next election. I did just send administration, like Rocky View counties, they were one neighbor that recently changed electoral boundaries pretty substantially. And there is some language just in the, towards the end of that bylaw, under transitional, the last clause is bylaw C8077 2020 being the electoral boundaries and council composition bylaw comes into full force and effect on October 18th, 2021. So I don't know if we should we consider second reading and then have administration bring it back? We have time.
Yes. So through the chair, that was one thing that administration was just going to mention is that administration can't give you an answer right now on the spot. We'll just need a little bit of time. So
For sure.
perhaps we could even defer this to the next council meeting. We don't have a rush to pass this bylaw at any point. Why don't we just?
Why don't we just have a motion to table until the next council meeting, and then administration can review with legal or do an administrative review and bring a recommendation back to council for the next council meeting. The only requirement is for it to come into effect at the next election. We need it passed prior to the end of December 31st of this year. So we do have some time to just ensure that we have the language absolutely optimal.
I'll make a motion to table this bylaw
To our next council meeting.
till our next council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.2, bylaw 2024-24.
Good morning, Council. Brian from administration. On page 36 of your agenda package is the bylaw 2024-24 procedure bylaw. At the August 20th Committee of the Whole meeting, administration presented a draft procedure bylaw, and that was based on some feedback that was received by council. During the Committee of the Whole, there was 4 amendments that were proposed. Of the 4 amendments, 3 were accepted by council in principle to bring back to this council meeting. The one that did receive additional feedback and required further changes from administration was section 156 of the procedure bylaw. So 156 is on page 52 of your agenda package. And this one was regarding additional amending motions in the procedure bylaw. So the way that administration took council's feedback or the committee's feedback to bring back to council was, and it's right there in the council package, only one amending motion and only one amendment to an amending motion are permitted. When there are multiple amending motions, the amending motions are considered in reverse order of what they are moved, resulting in the main motion being considered last. So administration did try to capture the committee's feedback and brought this back to council today. If there are any questions about this paragraph or the procedure bylaw, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions from council? Councillor Laverson.
So the second sentence says when there are multiple amending motions, the amending motions are considered in reverse order of when they were moved. But unless I'm mistaken, do they not have to be considered and then voted upon, whether the amendment passes or not, and then move on to the next one?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. So maybe that's 156 still does need a little bit of work.
When I looked at it, I actually preferred the option in the beginning of the package, but maybe done slightly differently. So I thought it could just say if there's a motion on the floor, amendments can be proposed, but only one can be considered at a time. And then you could, sorry, back here. You could then say, when there are multiple amending motions, the amending motions are considered in reverse order when they are removed, resulting in the main motion being considered last. Or I guess if Councillor Larson is suggesting the main motion would be considered each time after an amendment, is that what we're?
If you make an amendment to a motion, you have to vote on the amendment before you can move on to the next one, in my understanding.
Yeah, and I think administration is just using the word considered to imply voting, but we could say considered and voted upon for clarity.
Yeah, so on page 36, just to see if council would consider this one, perhaps this one right here, option number 1, if there is a motion on the floor, amendments can be proposed, but only one can be voted on, considered and voted on at a time. After each amendment is resolved, the main motion, whether amended or not, is reconsidered. Would that be sufficient for council for section paragraph 156?
Sorry, what page is that on?
So it's on page 36. I just included in the report itself, just in case that 156 did not get off the, wasn't accepted by council. So just even on the other monitor, or the main screen, it's just highlighted there. So the only thing that would be changed would just be at the end of the first line, but only one can be considered and voted on at a time.
Yeah, I like that because then we're not limiting. I mean, sometimes it becomes awkward, but you could amend things multiple times before everybody's satisfied with it. So I don't think we should limit it, but so I think that's a good option. The first sentence and then, yeah. And then just saying how it proceeds.
Yes, and administration's thought process on the second option, which is potentially not palatable for council, was just to potentially limit it, but if no limits are required, and we haven't had a situation where someone just continually tries to amend a motion over and over and over again. So option 1 probably would be a little bit better in that case, so.
Could I just request consideration of changing the last word from reconsidered to considered and voted upon? And the only reason I say that is because we have an actual motion to reconsider, which would be like to vote again on something, just so there's no confusion. But I do appreciate the recommendation from administration. I too like the one that's in the report with the revisions that CAO Henderson has referenced. For absolute clarity, we could even just say if there's a motion on the floor, amendments can be proposed, but only one can be considered and voted on at a time. After each amendment is considered and voted on, the main motion, whether amended or not, will be considered and voted upon, and then it's all consistent and there's no debate about language or.
Just through the chair, administration, I believe this is what has been captured in the conversation.
Would we be able to just change the word resolved to considered and voted? On, I guess. And then just add and voted on at the very end after considered for the main motion.
So just to clarify, are we saying that after each amendment, we would go back to the main? No. So after all amendments are considered? Is that what we're saying?
Yep. Yes, thank you. Good catch. That was my intent anyways.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
I think
my
that's your
understanding as well.
strongest process is. Does that capture all of the feedback from everybody? So the proposed amendment for section 156 is up on the screens for council to review. Council's wishes.
I'll move first reading of bylaw 2024-24 with the amendment to section 156 as discussed.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve second reading of bylaw 2024-24 as amended.
Any questions or discussion? Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council grant permission to hold third and final reading of bylaw 2024-24 as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried unanimously. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve third and final reading of bylaw 2024-24.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.3, bylaw 2024-27. Good morning.
Morning, Council. Cody Zimmerman with Administration, presenting road licensing bylaw 2024-27, third reading. At the August 13th, 2024 regular council meeting, council granted the first and second reading of bylaw 2024-27. A motion was made to hold the third and final reading during the same meeting. However, the motion was not unanimously supported. The report from the August 13th meeting has been provided for council's information. And just as another note, the grammatical issues that were noted were corrected for this report. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from council?
I have some concerns. I've been thinking about this since the last meeting. We have a lot of road allowances that are be farmed, and they've been farmed since since the guy's been farming. And there's instances out there where guys farming a road allowance, and the oil company comes and gets a lease down the thing, but he doesn't pay for the road because he uses the road allowance. So if he licenses that road allowances, we're gonna do 2 licenses, we'll still allow the guy to farm it? Or is the guy gonna go get the lease and say, I'm farming that now, you can't have your lease road on there? I think for things that are already going on, this is going to be a real headache for some people, and it's not gonna be fair. So if the oil company figures out that we can go get a bunch of leases, oh, that'd be great for the oil company, but for the farmer that's been putting up with it and keeping the road, it's not gonna be great. Anything moving on, yeah, but we have miles of farmed road allowances, and especially in that east country. My country is the grass walled. There is a lot of roads that you don't even know that's there, and they're being farmed. And it's going to cause problems.
We'll let administration speak to Councillor Custer's concerns, and then we'll move to Councillor Laverson.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess in the instance that you're describing, where are you concerned about the farmer getting the license of occupation or the oil company getting the license of occupation?
I'm concerned about either,
Either.
because the other one ain't gonna like it.
So I guess the thought on that would be is that if there's 2 different entities or 2 different members of the public requiring access, then that road allowance is required for public access. So in that instance, we wouldn't issue a license to either party, because it's obviously required by more than one person to use that road allowance in that instance.
Would section 5.2 help with that as well? It says the license of occupation issued pursuant to this bylaw shall grant only a non-exclusive use.
Yes, there is no guarantee that sorry, someone who has the license can't block access to anybody else. So yes, non-exclusivity. You can't prevent anyone from using it. Again, there's no compensation for any kind of damage. So the thought would be that if someone needed to use that allowance, regardless of the reason, they could do so still. They would just grant the adjacent landowner the right to crop it. But I don't see an instance where we would grant a license of occupation to an oil company for any reason if they were just using it to access a lease, because that would just be public access at that point. I hope that answers it a little bit.
Kinda.
Sorry.
I don't know what the future is gonna bring though.
Councillor Laverson.
So here's the question for me, is what is the problem that we're trying to solve with this bylaw?
Through the chair, so just going back to the previous report, the main issues that we've had develop are one being public utility wanting to install some infrastructure within a right-of-way, and being that the county is a landowner of that land where the facility exists, we can't actually rent them that area. We can't do it through a standard encroachment agreement. And this is the only way in which that we can grant them right to develop that portion of the right-of-way, to have facilities on it. And we've circulated this through legal, and this is one of the main drivers is to allow this utility provider to be able to install this infrastructure, which is needed for the community of Carsland. On the other side, we're trying to capture some of the other complaints and things that we've seen over time, which is disputes as to why someone's cropping right away versus not cropping right away and those sorts of things. So the real main driver is the utility issue. And then On top of that, we're trying to just encapsulate some of these other complaints and comments and things that we've had, and then trying to incorporate it all and catch it all in this document. I would say the other big one being the leasing of some of the large unused subdivided land on the fringes of communities such as Gleason, Clooney, those areas. It's not being used for any purpose right now, some of that land. We can't legally lease that land because of the right of ways within it. So this would allow us to be able to do that, make the land functional, usable. At least somebody's getting some use out of it, right? At that point, as opposed to just being unmanaged, unmaintained. So that would be another big driver.
So how many times has a utility company requested this?
We've had several instances with utility companies needing to expand into the right-of-way area. The main thing would be is that this is usually from land that they own. So it's kind of a unique experience where, or situation where we own the land and they have a utility right-of-way on it, and they need to install a gas line heater and are unable to do so within the current confines of the lot. So this would allow them to do that in this situation.
There's a plethora of those in my division and a lot of the eastern part of the county. I can see this causing more problems than it's solving with fencing issues and disputes over who gets that part of the road allowance. So I don't think this is a good idea.
So I kind of disagree. I do support it. I think it would be great for Clooney. There is some county-owned land there on the fringe of the community that are never going to get developed. It would be great if we could lease that out to farmers to cultivate it. And I also think that although people have been doing this for time immemorial, it's good to, I guess, remind people that that is a road allowance, and you're doing it through the grace of the county, really. And I don't think that everybody's going to all of a sudden have to make an application for this. I think that things will continue on as they are, unless there is a dispute, unless there's neighbors that are disputing a certain thing, and then it's easily resolved where you say, well, nobody gets it. So I support it. I think it's a good practice for the county to start doing.
Oops, sorry, never turned it off. So to that point, all the existing ones, what happens if they don't apply? And they just keep on same old, like we've done for 100 years?
Through the chair. So yeah, our intent would not be to track down anybody that's using a road allowance for their own purpose and to push them into this program. It is only to deal with the complaints and the conflicts as they arise, and it gives us a process and a means by which to do that. And then also gives us a means within here to be able to terminate a lease for any reason at any time. So anybody that's currently using a lease of their own accord to crop it or whatever, they would just continue to do so until such time there might be a complaint or something, and then we would ask them to either to go apply through this process to legitimize that use. And if it doesn't come up, then they'll just continue doing what they're doing.
Okay, I can kind of live with that. And I've been sitting here for a while. I've had a few complaints about leases, and the fence should be here, or the fence should be there. And my advice was to them, I says, figure it out, or the county will come figure it out for you. And they've never come. They figured it out all on their own, so that'll still be my advice, but we got this to rely on, then it gives staff a little more, I guess, way to control it. It's too bad.
Yes, and just one comment to the chair from administration as well is that the county is complaint based. So the county doesn't go around looking to like enforce certain bylaws. Like a good one is, you know, a nuisance bylaw, for example. Certainly there are most likely people in contravention of the nuisance bylaw out in the county somewhere, but you know, sometimes the neighbors don't mind and, you know, there's trade-offs there. So that would be this kind of similar process with this. It certainly isn't our intention to go track down people using road allowances for farming or whatever kind of they're using it for now. It's more just to address utility infrastructure needs in certain communities that we need to get that going. Then it also provides us a good opportunity to lease out other lands that aren't being used right now. So it's kind of certainly not our intention to enforce this bylaw against someone using a road allowance somewhere, you know, in the remote areas of the county. That being said, however, if there were issues with someone or complaints that brought forward on someone, you know, utilizing a road allowance right now, we would still go through a mechanism to enforce to get them out of it, right? So it's not like if a complaint did come in, we'd ignore it now. We just have another mechanism to deal with it.
Okay. So consideration will be given to previous use and treat them with, I'd hate to use the word respect because I know the county endeavors to do that, but still, it could leave a bad taste in people's mouth.
Yes, through the chair, our intent is not to go out and find people cultivating road allowances and enforce this bylaw on them. That's certainly not our intention at all. You know, if we don't have a complaint on anything, probably not going to do anything about it. So, or we won't be doing anything about it.
When we put the blue signs up, street corners and everywhere, I never thought of one of the consequences, but I could go down roads and there's all kinds of signs on there where there is no road. And you get asked, so you tell them, well, that's a road allowance, so people know what's going on out there. So I've never had any problems with it, but people are more aware. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Any other questions for administration? Councillor Labrie.
Just a reiteration, I guess. I was just listening to CEO Henderson, and so if without this bylaw, if there was a dispute, you would likely tell both parties, I'm sorry, now we have to close the road allowance to you. You can't use it. With this bylaw, you could say, oh, one party needs to apply to have the lease. Is that kind of true? Like if two parties were disputing without this bylaw, what would be your?
Through the chair, I want to stay away from the word close because that's just, it's a whole different bylaw and different thing. But I mean, we would
Right.
ask them to, they're basically, you know, say that this is county property. You can't use it for your purpose, right?
Sorry, that's what I meant by close. You would limit access. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Well, and even in that case, I mean, we couldn't limit access because it is public. So I know it's tricky language.
Restrict use.
Got it.
But yeah, you wouldn't be able to use it for your own means, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
So this would help in this situation. This would allow the farmer to continue to use it.
Yeah, for sure. And if a conflict does arise where two landowners, one's using it and the other one has an issue with the way he's using it or whatever, or they're using it, the mechanism exists within the agreements that need to be signed to terminate those licenses and say, sorry, you need to
I
vacate
guess
this land.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions or discussion? Councillor Laverson.
So just a question to administration, like a lot of the people in my area, I have one of these on my land, so should I abstain from voting?
Through the chair, no. That would just, no, there would be no conflict there. Thank you.
The MGA indicates if it's something that like impacts a wide variety of ratepayers and you are a ratepayer, then it's not a pecuniary interest. I'm paraphrasing, but that's sort of the gist of it. If it was specific to one landowner, then we would want to consider that.
Well, I could make that argument that I'm a ratepayer and this will affect a wide variety of ratepayers.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that would mean that it wouldn't have a pecuniary interest because it's widely available to many ratepayers. Any other questions or discussion?
Unless, of course, you're in a dispute with their neighbor, then you could use it.
There's no other questions. Council's wishes.
I move that council approve third and final reading of road licensing bylaw 2024-27.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to our consent agenda, agenda item 5. So council has options. We can remove something from the consent agenda if there's anything anybody would like to discuss. Councillor Laprise.
I would like to ask if we could remove the letter from Cypress County, please, for discussion.
Certainly. Let's move. Let's move agenda item 5.8 to 6. Like under 6. The next, so we'll address that following the consent agenda items.
So I could move to remove consent agenda item 5.8, add it under item 6.1, and approve the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Just a quick point. Thank you to administration. The clarification on page 84 under correspondence is helpful. I think just for if somebody was reviewing minutes, it does note that it may be discussed under the consent agenda. So just in follow up to the question around if, remember when it said there was no correspondence, but it could be under consent. So thank you, that's perfect. I appreciate it. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll now move to agenda item 5.8, correspondence from Cypress County.
Is that 5.8 or 6.1?
It can be 6.1.
And the only thing I wanted to raise on this was that they had asked if we could share the information about their Cypress County Ag Connections Conference on our social media or other communications. But I thought if we could do that, that would be very helpful for them. Sounds like a great conference, and I'm sure that some ag producers in our area would be interested to attend. So
Yeah, that's a great idea. I also wasn't sure, and I'm just looking at the registration. It would be good if we could maybe refer this to the ASB, but I'm just checking timing. Yeah, so registration is open until October 31st. Perhaps we could refer it to the ASB for consideration of attendance. I'm not sure if it would be good for either the ASB, open it up to the ASB board or a subset of representatives from the ASB, including the members at large.
that's a great idea. Yeah, we could certainly refer it to ASB. I think we have an
So would you like
October.
perhaps to put a motion on the floor for administration to share the Cypress County event and to refer it to the next ASB meeting?
Yeah.
The Cypress County Ag Connections Conference.
to, and refer to ASB.
The motion is on our screens. The council direct administration to share the Ag Connection Conference on social media and refer to ASB. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Councillor Kester.
I'm looking at the poster. And tickets go on sale July 2nd. But I don't see a cost.
It's $55. Or that might have been
I think that would
early
be
bird.
helpful. If we could.
Yeah, when you click get tickets, it says the price range is $42 to $78.75.
Oh yeah, $55 early bird. I see that now.
That ends August 31st.
Yeah, so the regular admission is $78.75. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.1. My reports for July and August are included in the package starting on page 97. Just highlight a couple of events. There was some good events during the Calgary Stampede. Some corporate events. Lakes and Muirfield had a Stampede barbecue in the community. I know a number of councillors attended that as well. There was a Government of Alberta Stampede reception with a number of cabinet ministers and then stakeholders from different industries throughout Alberta. It was an excellent opportunity for networking. CGC had a incredible fundraiser event during the Calgary Stampede as well, and they raised $24,000 for the Trellis Society via a silent auction. Very grateful for all of their support of different nonprofits in our community. Also just want to highlight on July 11th, I was invited to Invest Alberta's Stampede Breakfast and Partner Showcase at the SAM Centre. And Invest Alberta did recognize Wheatland County for our investment attraction work that we've been doing in Alberta. It was a great honor to represent all of you. And just a thank you to all of council and to our administration that have made that happen in Alberta. And there was also a minister's reception put on by the Independent Power Producers Society of Alberta regarding data centers. So they had data center developers and power producers and several cabinet ministers from the province as well. So just making those connections and discussing the opportunities that are coming with data centers in Alberta, which could also be a good opportunity for Wheatland County. Also had a really fun time at the Wheatland West Fire Family Volunteer Appreciation Barbecue, and just want to thank administration for hosting that event for our firefighters and their families. They do incredible work in our community and really grateful for their service. It was excellent to just hear about all of their experiences. Then in August, there was the Strathmore Stampede was an incredible event again this year. Grateful for all of my colleagues who joined us in the parade. I felt like I wanted to have a sign up, like riding, not because I'm lazy, but because I'm recovering from surgery. But a thank you to Keith Drake for allowing us to use his truck, and to Councillor Eckert for your work on that as well. The town of Strathmore invited us to a brunch with Premier Smith and MLA Chantal DeYoung. That was a great event. And then the Premier and MLA DeYoung were also around the Strathmore Stampede for the rest of that day and scheduled some meetings with some of the developers in Wheatland County. So it was a good opportunity to highlight the high value employment opportunities and diversification of our rural economy. I will move that. Oh, one other thing I'll just quickly highlight. I included it before I submitted my report, but the Community Futures Yeti wrap-up. That's the Youth Entrepreneur Training Initiative. And we had a youth from Wheatland County that participated this year. And so we got to meet a number of the local entrepreneurs and business people that supported the youth that were in the training program, as well as both of the youth that participated, and to hear about their businesses and what they learned throughout the program. And it was just incredible to see, especially the support from the businesses that helped the program be a success. So with that, I will move my report as presented, and I'm happy to move my report to be accepted as presented, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Call the question.
Just one question, and you probably can't answer it, but when you had the minister's reception on July 11th, and they were talking about the data centers, what is, and I don't know if you can answer, what is the feel, are the data centers going to bring their own power? Or are they going to try to piggyback off of what we have? And I would have, my personal opinion, I'd have concerns if because I believe we had 3 blackout warnings within a day of, last year. And, and I understand these are great opportunities, but they also they're power pigs. So they need a lot of electricity. So I'm just wondering, was there any discussion on that, or is that way too early in this conversation?
No, there was absolutely discussion on that. And I'm just going to an article. Sorry, just give me one moment. Well, just in summary, I'll circulate an article to all of council, but I think the primary focus for the province would be to have generation on site. So natural gas. There are some that are looking at renewables or combining renewable with natural gas. There may also be tie into the grid as well. Many of these producers are looking for redundant power sources, but I think the primary focus and the rationale for combining the power producers with the data center developers is to support that development of power on site.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda 7.2. Deputy Reeve Clausen's reports are in the package. Perhaps if somebody wants to move them, and if there's any questions, we can follow up after with Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.3. Councillor Laprise.
Excuse me. My report is on page 103 and 104. Like we've linked, also attended some fabulous events this summer. Strathmore Stampede was a lot of fun to attend. The Strathmore Ag Society has done an amazing job of renovating their suites in the infield, and so that just is a great venue for accommodating like business development events and things like that. So that's a great addition to the community. I love talking about the BMO Farm Family Awards at the Calgary Stampede. I had the great honor of hosting our Farm Family Award winner in Wheatland County, the Christensen family. And so I just love to highlight the great work that farm families do in our county, in our province, and our country. So kudos to them. They are very worthy of the award. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. If there's any questions, I'll happy to answer, but I'll move my report to be accepted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.4.
Yeah, my report's in the package. Busy summer, but it was lots of nice events. Kudos again to the Ag Society for sure for Strathmore Stampede. And the parade was great. Yeah, just a few meetings. We had a nice break. I enjoyed that. And yeah, I'll move my report as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.5.
My report is on the server. I would like to, there was a lot of events happening in around Stampede and around both the Calgary Stampede and the Strathmore Stampede. And I would just like to give kudos to the two main, like to CGC and to de Havilland. I believe they are going to be fantastic corporate partners to deal with. Everything they did was that I've been involved with them has been always top notch. So kudos to them. It's not on my report, but on August 21st, I with Councillor Laprise went to a beta testing meeting for farm safety put on by Global Training, and the testing, the course I believe is going to be does a great job in filling a niche. They're basically doing this to this point on their own. It was a vision that was held by Don Shelley. I talked to Don probably 15 years ago. He was already talking about, you know, what can we do? How do we set up a program? I mean, I had lunch with him probably 3 months before he passed away, and he was still, that was what the meeting was about. It was, so it's amazing. So kudos to Global for putting this out. I believe they've highlighted a part of safety training in the farm business, because agriculture has changed so much over in my lifetime, safety wise and all that kind of stuff, moving equipment around, the size of equipment and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, just wanted to highlight that. And with that, I'll move my my report. If there's any questions, be more than glad to answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Eckert. Any questions? In addition to Councillor Eckert's words of gratitude for de Havilland and CGC, I also would just extend that to all of the businesses in Wheatland County. It was incredible seeing just the corporate support from our small businesses that dig deep to make community events happen and put jerseys on the backs of our kids in sports and everything that happens. Businesses really are the backbone of our community, and these things don't happen without that corporate support. So a huge thank you for every business in our region that supported the Strathmore Stampede and that supports other events and nonprofit groups as well. If there's no other questions, I will call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.6.
July's on the server. August, attended council meeting on the 13th. And on the 20th, we had MPC Committee of the Whole and a presentation committee meeting. And if any questions, otherwise I'll move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.7.
Most of the stuff on my report has already been discussed, so I'll just give a short update on the T. Armstrong letter that happened last meeting. So I had a discussion with Terry Armstrong after she sent me an email August 22nd, 2024, restating the concerns she had in her letter to the county. We were able to resolve some, but not all of the issues. I received an apology for some of the issues, and those matters are closed, so I won't speak of them. But I will provide an update on the email that I hope will bring this matter to a close. As I told Mrs. Armstrong, putting up my feet is not a violation of any county policy. I do it for medical reasons that I do not have to explain. However, one of those reasons is the result of the knee replacement I had, and that is no secret. I try to put my feet up when one of the councillors goes on a rant that has nothing to do with running the business of the county so that I don't miss the important issues. And while I am not required to explain this, what she reviewed as texting is simply making notes about items on the agenda. My cell phone records can be requested to be made public, and I find this particular accusation hypocrisy for how it was handled at the last council meeting. I happen to have photographs of both the Reeve and the Deputy Reeve on their phones at meetings, but I've chosen not to be that petty and complain about it. In order to appease Mrs. Armstrong and the members of this council that complained at the last meeting, I will use a chair to put my feet up on rather than the table. This in no manner admits to any wrongdoing because there is none. There is no policy regarding putting my feet up, and this should never have been brought to the county. This will not be as good for me, but I will make that compromise if it stops the spurious complaints so this council can get on with what they are supposed to do, which is govern. I will still be submitting a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner in the proper manner regarding how this was initially handled by some members of this council. And Mrs. Armstrong has admitted that it was just her personal opinion. I suspect an opinion on other councillor members that was submitted to the county would never make it to the agenda. I would also state that respect is not something that is deserved, rather it is something that must be earned, and whenever disrespect is shown consistently to a person or persons, disdain is what naturally follows. And with that, I will move my report as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Laursen. Any questions? Thank you for your explanation for putting your feet up on the council chamber's table. I have actually specifically referenced that it may have been for medical purposes, and that's fully acceptable. I think it could have helped. I realize you're under no obligation to share medical information, but to indicate that it's an accommodation that's necessary for medical reasons, I think might help assuage concerns. I think there were concerns beyond that, and I will raise concerns about your statement that you made. I think that it's blatantly disrespectful to say that you choose to do so when one of the councillors goes on a rant, and to imply that we're not focused on operating the council and contemplating county business during the meeting is further disrespect, which I do agree with you that respect is earned, but you also did take an oath, and you also do serve under a bylaw, which is legislation that you are required to follow. And under that bylaw, under respectful interaction, section 18, it says councillors and members must conduct themselves with decorum when engaging or interacting with other councillors and members, county employees, and the public. And councillors and members must not use any harassing, offensive, discriminatory, or disrespectful language or conduct about council, a councillor, a member, county employees, or the public. And the statement that you just made was blatantly disrespectful of your colleagues and of this council.
If you have an issue with it, I invite you to submit a complaint. Otherwise, I think this matter is closed.
So during council meetings, it's council's responsibility to both ensure that our own conduct and the conduct of our colleagues is respectful. We owe it to our ratepayers that we represent, and we owe it to the Institute of Democracy and this council to treat each other with respect. There are multiple scenarios where that has been violated, and we have a responsibility to raise it. And I am raising it right now. I would request that you retract your statement about your fellow colleagues and that you use more respectful language.
I didn't find it disrespectful. It was just merely a statement. I can provide examples if you want.
And with reference to the correspondence coming to council, as Deputy Reeve Clausen indicated last time, all correspondence that administration receives that is addressed to Reeve and council is included in council packages. It always has been, and we have placed it on a future committee of the whole agenda to review that process. I would point out that there have been multiple times where correspondence has come with individual ratepayers, individual opinions or perceptions of myself, other colleagues on council, or decisions that council makes. And it's, I think, prudent that we be transparent with that, and that we are consistent with how we address things. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.1.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 117 of your agenda package is the CIO monthly report for July and August. The one thing that administration would like to point out is just the highlighted section in bold on page 117. It's fairly interesting. I don't think this will happen again in my lifetime anyways, but it's just that the potential of the municipal election and the federal election being on the same date. So that's just something that administration just highlighting to council, and I'm sure there'll be lots of documentation coming up from RMA and other organizations, just that these two could fall on the same day. Not saying it's a bad thing, but it just may strain election workers, have a shortage of them because, you know, federal and municipal, there's only so many that do. We're kind of fortunate in the county where a lot of our voting stations are in, well, all of our voting stations are in the county, and the federal ones are typically in an urban area. So just something to consider for council. Besides that, the usual council resolution tracker starts on page 119 of your agenda package. Anything in yellow is deemed ongoing. Anything in green is deemed complete. If there are any questions about this report, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Henderson. Any questions or discussion?
Just on the election, how much lead time do you need for this decision to be made? Like, I can see that it's a federal election could very well impact municipal elections because my constituents vote in Cheadle, and they're not going to probably want to go from Cheadle to Strathmore and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be just trying to make it as easy as possible.
So I think it could be up until June 30th of 2025 that council needs to make that election. But we have lots of meetings, obviously, in between now and then. So we fully anticipate there'll be some literature released from RMA on the topic as well. So we'll probably, administration will look at their guidance, and no doubt our colleagues in the province as well will have some input on that before we kind of make a decision. So just something Nothing that we need to make a decision on today, but just something I wanted to highlight to council.
Question to administration. So I meant to look at the Local Authorities Election Act, but is that the only option to do it on the Saturday before? Because it seems like people are used to voting on Mondays. I do think there'd be confusion and people would be confused about what they're voting for if it was on the same day. I think it would be good to have it on a different day, but like a Saturday is a weird day for an election.
Through the chair, yes, it is. So I think that is the only day. So that is legislated by the Local Authorities or Local Elections Act. So, but again, we'll provide more guidance at this in the future.
Any other questions? Just a comment commending you and your team on the WCB premium discount, estimating it 73% lower than industry standard. Obviously, the fiscal impact of that is great, but also I think it points to the safety record of the county. And so thank you for all of the work that contributes to that. Any other questions or discussion?
I move that council accept July-August 2024 Chief Administration Office report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Is there any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes regarding the tracker.
I move that council accept the September 3rd, 2024 council resolution trackers information.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.12.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from administration again. On page 126 of your agenda package is a request from Kneehill County to be the resolution seconder for the resolution renewable electricity and grid stability for consideration at the 2024 Central Rural Municipalities District 2 Fall General Meeting. The resolution that Reeve King provided to Reeve Link and myself starts on page 129, and kind of the hope, or in summary, the therefore be it resolved on page 129 is what the resolution is about. If there's any questions about this report or any other processes regarding this, please let me know. Thank you.
I'm not sure that personally I agree with it. I think that for me, the province has already made a move to allow municipal input into where renewable development can occur. And so to me, this would limit it quite a bit more. And I think some municipalities probably appreciate the tax revenue that comes from renewables. I think there's already things in place to try to make things better in terms of placement and looking at ag land and trying not to impose those on those highly productive land. So on the other hand, this is just a seconder on a resolution that would get debated at RMA. So I guess I'm looking for a little guidance. Should we be approving this as a seconder to have debate later, or should we only approve this if we believe that it's the right thing? It's a question to you, maybe.
I think you can in good conscience support it going forward to the membership, even if you don't personally believe it's a priority advocacy issue. I think through discussions with member municipalities within our district, but also throughout Alberta, there are continued concerns about AUC decisions around renewables. And this is just more focused on that grid stability side of it and ensuring that and leaving latitude to the developer to determine what that would look like, but to ensure some contribution to the grid consistently, whether that's through battery storage or alternate means. Councillor Eichert?
Yeah, I think this is, I think we should, I'll be voting for seconding it. Because if you go on the, on page 130, the second to last, the intended objective of this resolution is to ask the province to require AUC approved renewable energy development to contribute stated minimum electricity contribution. I don't think anybody has a real problem with renewable energy if you could somehow guarantee that if I'm going to bring in a, say, 100 megawatt solar power, that there is, I can guarantee that that's going to be, that's going to add 100 megawatts to the power grid. So what we're having now is we're having these solar panels coming in, and they're, during the summer, during the day, they generate tremendous amounts, but at night they don't generate anything. So then we're having to, you know, fall back on tax-funded taxpayers putting in high-generated, fast-speed, high-generation natural gas at, what, about $2.5–3 million a megawatt. So I think this has got to be a discussion that has to be made. Do we want renewables that on the back of, to add any dependability to is being done strictly on the back of the taxpayer, or should it be done on, should the renewable companies be responsible for saying, okay, we're going to bring in a wind farm and it's going to be a 100 megawatt wind farm, and we guarantee that there will be always 50 megawatts of power coming off of that wind farm, whether they have to supply their own gas-fired generation, but it shouldn't be on the backs of, it should not be on the backs of the taxpayer. And so I would love to have this discussion. So I'll be voting for it.
So it's more about transparency of what's, like, they say 100 megawatts, but you're saying it's not always 100 megawatts. It's somewhere in, you know, it could be it's up and down. So you want a minimum to say that that's a more accurate reflection of what's coming out of a particular installation.
Council's wishes.
I'll move that Wheatland County second Nehill County's resolution renewable electricity and grid stability for consideration at the 2024 Central Rural Municipalities of Alberta District 2 Fall General Meeting and the 2024 RMA Fall Convention.
Any questions or discussion? Call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.21.
Good morning, Council. Corey from Administration here to present the Corporate and Financial Services Report to Council for July and August 2024. I don't have too much to add to this report based on what's written, but I did want to bring Council's attention to one thing. As we're adding a little bit more detail and charts to some of the activities in the team, I just wanted to point some focus around the digital transformation project. I guess these are kind of not easy to see. So on page 133 of the report is some charts here on the digital transformation project, which I'll try to zoom it in. And it just shows some of the project progress. So we have about 57 forms and workflow processes in the queue right now, which is a subset of the total amount of forms and processes that we intend to either have digitized and have some workflow automation. And the team is making great progress. A lot of the work that's being done by both our contractor and internal staff has been great, and everybody's been very supportive of it. So we're really happy at the progress that's being made here. And that concludes my report, and staff are here for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
I'll move that Council accepts the Corporate and Financial Services Report to Council for July and August 2024.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.22.
Morning, Council. Joel here from Financial Services. Just here to go through our annual update on property tax statistics. So we had provided this a similar report, I believe the last 2 years for Council, and I'll just kind of summarize it. There is a lot of figures, percentages, and totals here. Essentially what we're hoping to show here is just the main picture in the graph here. So what we've done is we look at the June 30th tax deadline in the context of the total tax levy for, in this example, it's the $41.8 million, and that includes the school portion, like everything that goes on the tax bill, the municipal portion, all of the gross taxes, because they're all collected in the same bill at the same time. So what we do is we take the total amount and then we look at how much is left payable in terms of a cash perspective. We take the TIPS, which is our automatic withdrawal program. People can go on that and pay throughout the year. They're penalty free on that program, and so they're not really technically late. They're paying it. It's a benefit to the county and the customer in terms of cash flow. So we just kind of want to show that amount that's on the TIPS for the remainder of the year, as well as the assessment changes. That's things that go through, I believe it's the Municipal Government Act, Section 305, where there's just an assessment complaint or a change in assessment value, and those can vary year to year. And essentially, they aren't payable necessarily on the same due date as other properties, but their bill, it's not too far out. I think it's 30 or 60 days from the point of change. So we've kind of pulled those figures out, but we also show them in those tables just for your interest. And then essentially what we want is just to roll up the orange graph here is kind of the most relevant metric, which would be kind of the outstanding tax values as of June 30th, year over year, and that kind of takes those TIP figures out. So it shows for the most part, the amount owing after the deadline. And as you can see, the trend is positive for the county. So that's showing good. In addition, last year we started showing the percentage of uncollected as of the prior year's audit date, the uncollected taxes, and that's also trending downwards as well. So which is both positive news on that regard. And that concludes my report. Staff are available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the 2024 property tax statistics report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried, and thank you for your work on that. I think it helps us gauge where we're at in terms of revenue and certainty around that. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's move to agenda item 8.23.
Morning, Joel again. You guys get to stick with me for the next few items, I guess. So this next report is just our standard, it's kind of a housekeeping item, a CVIP inspection that we do for the Strathmore Handy Bus. Every 6-month period, we bill them for the services that have been provided. And then just as in the past, we have an in-kind budget allotment and in the budget. And so this request is just that equivalent, $2,250 that have been invoiced out, the request for council to provide this as an in-kind service. That concludes my report. Staff are available for questions.
Thank you. Council's wishes. Councilor Larison.
I'll move that council direct administration to write off the commercial vehicle inspection program invoice for January to June 2024 in the amount of $2,250 for the Strathmore Handy Bus and provide this service as in kind.
Thank you, Councilor Larison. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.24.
Okay, this next item is our quarterly in-kind donations update report. And so just as per the council resolution made in June of last year, staff just accumulate all of the in-kind donations from the managers of things that have been provided to various communities and organizations. And we provide the totals and the organization and details and descriptions in the table provided in the report. So for this last quarter, the total calculated was $4,750. As a note, the REMP portion was also added that wasn't included in prior reports. So we included the 6-month portion here. It was just a proration estimate that we did to come up with the values in there of just what the county pays in whole for that service or that individual. And so we'll just kind of be doing the quarterly estimate on that going forward as well. And the other thing to note is now that we have kind of a whole year under our belt for reports, then we'll start including a table as well, just so you can see kind of the quarterly totals year over year and just kind of see a trend on that regard as well. So staff are available for any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you. Council's wishes.
I'll move the council accepts the county in-kind donations update Q2 2024 report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to 8.25.
Okay, so this next agenda item is our unaudited financial statements as of June 30th, 2024. So finance staff provide this quarterly report of the unaudited financial position of Q2 and 3 every year to council. And I'll just kind of go through each statement and some noteworthy items. Start with the operating statement here. So overall, in terms of the revenue expenses, there's not really any concern. Everything's on track and looking pretty good. Something I did want to point out, as I do kind of every time, and for the benefit of the public as well, is that just to note that net surplus in terms of that budget, that negative $17 million, it includes amortization, which is not a cash expense. And so all of the amortization costs that we budget for, which is essentially all of the capital and facilities and infrastructure that the county builds to provide services, those are paid for in a given year, but then the accounting standards require us to expense those over a given time frame, sometimes up to 50 years. And so those costs are actually kind of required to be put into that budget. So all of those expense lines from a budget perspective include those non-cash costs. And the amortization totals that we budget for here, you can see is $15.6 million. So when you adjust for that, we can show our budget, which any municipality is required to budget to net zero, and that's what we do there. So in terms of the overall operations, you can see from a 6-month perspective in that center column, as of Q2, our budget of a surplus of $10.3 million. And so the county's in good shape in terms of having the surplus at 14.4 approximately. There's another thing to include in some of those expense budgets are transfers to and from reserves that are included below. Those are some, just accounting adjustments and not necessarily cash ones. So staff are available for any questions in terms of the financial statement itself. If not, then go on with the next one.
Any questions?
So we'll move on to the statement of financial position. This is as of the June 30th date, whereas when you're looking at the prior statement, that is kind of over the whole 6-month period. So just as a kind of reminder on that. So this shows us as a point in time, our financial assets and liabilities, the net financial assets. So it's kind of a good snapshot to take in terms of just kind of where the county is at mid-year. Something to keep in mind is that a lot of adjustments go in at year end during the audit as well. And so those aren't accounted for at the 6-month period. But the county, as you can see, is in a strong cash position, investment position in terms of that perspective. And then TCAs, which is tangible capital assets, and inventory, those get updated for the most part at the audit period during year end. Yeah, staff are available for any questions regarding this statement. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. So this is a newer report. I believe we started including last year. It's just to show the designated reserves and their balances as of June 30th. Again, in this case, we haven't gone through that audit period, which is a big part of the reserves balances change during the audit period. Because what we do is we go back during the whole year and we look at how much has been spent on capital, and then that has to be funded from accounting entries from either reserves or grants and whatnot. So those entries haven't been done in these, but this kind of gives a perspective of the June 30th balance, what's available in those designated reserves. And so we, we show the balance for each designated reserve, kind of a total based on our policy of the type of reserve and the totals by that, and then the total balances as well. It's $48 million. Staff are able for any questions regarding the reserves. Take that as a good sign. So our final statement is just our Q2 capital spending versus budget. And so I think the most relevant kind of overall would be the total that we show here. So that would be the $5 million versus the budget. And so we noted in the report, it's just to keep in mind that essentially all of the bridge and road budget projects that are over $1 million and a lot of these large infrastructure budgets, a lot of the work is done kind of the last 6 months of the year. And so that's why it seems like there's a lot of capacity there in the budget. It's just because Cody and his team get a lot of work done in that last period. So that gives some context to those figures. That concludes the financial statements. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions about the report? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the unaudited financial statement as of June 30th, 2024 as information.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.26.
Okay, so my last agenda item here to present is our utility account refunds. So essentially this is kind of a housekeeping item as per our refund policy. We have a handful of accounts that require a refund or have been requested a refund just with some updates to their meters and some repairs. So we have 4 in the table that's been shown. I apologize for the text wrapping there. Just as kind of per policy, the ones that are under $1,000 are for council's information. And the one item here at the bottom of the table has been put in a specific resolution just because of, as per policy, anything over $1,000 requires council's approval for that refund. Staff are available for any questions.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
Just one other item to note. Administration did receive a council comment requests or council comment request form for this item. It was by a resident by the name of Scott Wade. So he asked more questions about just a lot of questions, not necessarily a comment. So what we'll do is we'll address his questions back to him by email. And I did circulate all the questions to council. It just came today, so we just got those answers and we'll give them back to him just so council has them. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. Council's wishes.
We'll move that council, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll move that council approves refunding credit from overpayment of $1,686.06 to the utility account related to meter number 183-200-1593 as included in this report.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. So second motion just to accept as the report as information.
I move that council accepts the utility account refunds report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.31.
Good morning, Council. Sherry Bars with Administration to present the July and August 2024 Community and Development Services Update, which is found on page 163 of your agenda package. I only have one additional item that I wanted to provide an update on, which is in community services, the pathway projects for both the Lyalta and the Gleason pathways. They were tendered this summer, and unfortunately, due to the relatively high quotes received for both projects, we have decided to move forward with only one at this time. The Lyalta pathway in the Lakes of Muirfield project was chosen as it can be constructed within the allocated budget, whereas the Gleason pathway was quoted significantly above the budget. This approach allows us to complete one pathway this year while providing time to prepare for the Gleason pathway project to be released for tender in January 2025, with construction slated for completion the same year. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
I move that council accepts the July and August 2024 Community and Development Service Report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.32.
Good morning, Council. Mike Borgon from Administration here to present the 2024 Fire Capital Committee approvals. You will find the report on page 174 of your agenda. On August 5th, 2024, the Fire Capital Committee met to present and approve all fire department capital projects. All 8 fire departments were in attendance at this meeting. The following projects were approved unanimously by resolution. The first project is a new fire engine for Standard Rural Fire Association. This will replace the current 2007 Freightliner and is consistent with the Capital Committee's 20-year replacement plan. The total budget is $885,559.50. As per the Fire Services Association funding policy 12.0, 60% will be covered by Wheatland County. That totals $531,335.70. The other 40% is covered by Standard Rural Fire Association for a total of $354,223.80. The 2000 engine was purchased with a funding formula of 50% from the county and 50% from the association back in 2007. Any trade or resale will be split accordingly. This has been discussed and approved by the Capital Committee. Rosebud Rural Fire Association has elected to refurbish their 2006 engine. This will extend the life of the engine by 5 years and into 2031. The budget amount for this project is $50,000. The county portion will be $30,000 and the association portion will be $20,000. That concludes my presentation and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approves allocating $531,335.70, representing the county's 60% share for the purchase of a new fire engine for the Standard Rural Fire Association to be included in the 2025 Wheatland County operating budget.
Thank you, Councilor Laverson.
Guess my mic.
Discussion, Councilor Kester.
Just curious, the communities like Standard and Rosebud, Rockefort, Dallum, are they finding their contribution is getting more overbearing, shall we say? Like that's a lot of money coming from, especially on the other side of the county where they don't have to raise any money to get equipment.
Through the chair, this has never been brought up at the Capital Committee. There is times where we discuss the operating funding. Council did approve an increase to their operating funding, I believe a year ago, substantially. So from what I understand, that they are able to meet their financial needs through all associations.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes. Councilor Laverson.
I'll move that council authorizes that the proceeds from the trade-in or sale of the current 2007 fire engine be distributed as follows. 50% to Wheatland County Fire Capital Reserve and 50% to the Standard Rural Fire Association.
Thank you, Councilor Laverson. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes. Councilor Laverson.
Might as well get all three. That council approves, I'll move that council approves $30,000 representing the county's 60% share for the refurbishment of a 2006 fire engine for the Rosebud Rural Fire Association to be included in the 2025 Wheatland County operating budget.
Thank you, Councilor Laverson. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Thank you.
Could I, just while Chief Borgon is there, can I just take this time? I wanted to pass on a resident in my area her heartfelt thanks. There was a fire in a field near her house that was approaching her house, and she is so incredibly grateful. She got response from all of the fire services in the county, as well as Bassano, and she was anticipating her house being lost, and she is so very grateful. And I wanted to just maybe after the meeting talk to you about she'd like to make donations to different community, some kind of community donations in each of those areas. So thank you so much for the work you do. It is so important to everybody.
Through the chair, thank you, and I'll pass that on to the departments as well.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll move to agenda item 8.33.
Can I have a little bit of a break?
We've had a request for a break. Let's recess just for 5 minutes. We'll reconvene sharply at 10:45. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll reconvene and start with addressing agenda item 8.33, Development Permit 2024-033.
Good morning. I'm Suzanne Hayes, Development Officer with Wheatland County. This item begins on page 178 of the agenda package. It is a development permit application for a multi-use event and cultural center. The location plan is found on page 194 of the agenda package. It is located approximately a half a mile east of the town of Strathmore on the northeast corner of the intersection of Range Road 250 and Township Road 244. On the same page, we have the circulation map, and on page 195, the circulation map for the town of Strathmore. We circulated to adjacent landowners within 1 mile within Wheatland County and within the town of Strathmore to residents in the northeast portion of the town. We received 9 responses, 1 in support and 8 with concerns. 6 key areas of concern were raised by the respondents: traffic impacts, water and wastewater management, animal waste management, noise, dust control, security, and screening to adjacent landowners. The letters in their complete form are found in Appendix F attached to this report. We circulated to Alberta Transportation. They had no specific comments, but they did have a general comment stating that the department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by development approved on the local road connections to the highway system in accordance with their policies. We circulated to ATCO Gas, Alberta Health Services, and TELUS. They had no responses at the time of this report. The Western Irrigation District had no concerns. The town of Strathmore Fire Services said they were supportive of the development permit provided the applicant or county provides sufficient additional building occupancy information and a fire suppression plan regarding firefighting capacities to the satisfaction of the fire chief prior to the final development permit issuance. The town's infrastructure services office had no concerns with the development permit. It is noted that previous comments related to servicing and transportation remain applicable to the development proposal. So there were a number of items raised at redesignation that the town had asked, and now the applicant has provided responses to all of those questions. So the town has now submitted a revised response stating that fire has no concerns now with issuance of a development permit. Infrastructure confirms the additional information that was received is satisfactory and nothing further is required. And infrastructure advises that they have no concerns with the proposed memorandum of understanding in lieu of a development agreement with Wheatland County. This approach is acceptable, providing cost sharing with the applicant and the town would still be realized regarding intersection upgrades. The county transportation department said that this land has a land purchase agreement caveat on the title of the lands for a 5-meter road widening adjacent to the existing road rights of way. And as such, the county would like to obtain the additional right of way along the entirety of the lands on both Township Road 244 and Range Road 250 prior to the development on the lands in order to facilitate future road upgrades. The landowner applicant shall replace the existing land purchase agreement and easement for construction and maintenance agreement for road widening and replace it with the following. Dedicate 5 meters of road right-of-way along the entirety of the lands adjacent to Township Road 244 to facilitate current road upgrades, and execute and register a road acquisition agreement and easement for construction and maintenance agreement for the lands 5 meters adjacent to Range Road 250 for future road widening. An access and work agreement and a road use agreement will be required to be entered into with the county prior to the start of construction. Approach applications will be required to be completed for all 3 of the new approaches onto the lands. A dust control condition should be added to mitigate the impacts of post-development vehicle traffic on adjacent residences for the annual application of dust control to Range Road 250 from the Township Road 244 intersection north for 350 meters by no later than June 1st. And a condition should be added in the event that post-development traffic volumes are significantly higher than those anticipated within the TIA. A second dust control condition should be added to mitigate potential impacts to other residences along Range Road 250. As noted within the TIA, temporary wayfinding signage and traffic control personnel should be utilized during large professional events. As such, the applicant should be required to enter into an access and work agreement with the county annually. The TIA did not recommend any road network upgrades due to the development, though it should be noted that intersection upgrades at Highway 817 and Township Road 244 and intersection illumination at Highway 817 and Township Road 244 and Range Road 251 and Township Road 244 is warranted due to existing traffic volumes. The above items have been added as development permit conditions. Fire Services said they have two ponds and a dry hydrant, but no mention of the building being fully sprinklered with a fire alarm system. Looking at the current building code, this facility will be required to be fully sprinklered with a fire alarm system. The response was that the development is provided with a fire water supply, specifics pertaining to building classifications, locations of firewalls, and building requirements will be described at the time of building permit application. The peace officers said this intersection goes from paved onto a gravel road with an acreage in the vicinity. There is potential for traffic issues arriving and departing the facility for events. The response was that a TIA had been provided and been reviewed by Transportation and Planning departments. Page 196. We have the site plan. Some details. The application proposes a multi-use event and cultural center located primarily on the southeast corner of the subject parcel. The proposed development supports an event and equestrian center for public gatherings such as rodeos, artistic and theatrical performances, and supplemental activities involved in the training, boarding, and overall rearing of horses. Planned facility operations include weekday activities for on-site maintenance and horse training, cultural performances, and community gatherings in the evenings and weekends, and large professional and participant events on weekends. Direct Control District 23 was approved in June 2022 and includes 3 cells, which each supporting a different component of the overall site. So cell 1 is here outlined in red, the gray area. Cell 2 is this overflow parking area, and cell 3 is the remainder, which is an agricultural area. As previously mentioned, upgrades are required within the Wheatland County boundaries, include 3 new approaches and upgrades to 2 existing approaches. So there will be a new approach here just east of the intersection of the 2 county roads, one slightly further east of that as well. There will be also a new intersection along Range Road 250. Range Road 250 on the west side. And there are 2 existing approaches going into cell 3, one on the north side of the parcel and one on the south side along Township Road 244. And those 2 approaches need to be upgraded. So these have all been added as conditions. Additionally, I'll just bring up another diagram here on page 202. We have this diagram for off-site road improvements, and you can see here as the first entrance into the parcel, we are also requiring a left turn lane to be constructed at the western site access on Range Road 240, Township Road 244. These are the two existing approaches. This indicates there is dust control required on that road for 350 meters. And then within the town of Strathmore boundaries, we have an intersection upgrade required at Highway 817 and Township Road 244. And we have illumination warrants required at that intersection, as well as George Freeman Trail and Township Road 244. As these two upgrades are not located within Wheatland County, the applicant has requested that they be addressed with a memorandum of understanding with the town of Strathmore rather than including them as items within a development agreement with Wheatland County. Both the county and the town found this to be an acceptable approach, and conditions 9 and 10 have been drafted accordingly. Page 197, we have another site plan. So just to illustrate, the parking at the site consists of 182 gravel parking lot west of the main building, so here, and an overflow parking area in cell 2 for here. Overflow overnight parking is permitted in the designated parking area within cell 2. Noise. The site was designed with an intention to mitigate potential noise issues. Being an indoor facility, a large portion of the noise will be contained within the building. And the overnight parking camping area is intended for participants of events only, with no intention to have fire pits or for the overnight area to function as a traditional campground. Condition number 25 outlines specific guidelines regarding the overnight parking area. Multiple technical reports have been supplied in support of this application. The traffic impact assessment, as previously discussed. We have an extensive landscaping plan. I'll bring that up on page 200. Screening has been provided according to the Wheatland County Landscaping and Screening Guidelines. Treed screening has been included to provide a visually appealing streetscape along the west of the property development and to take into consideration the neighboring properties along Range Road 250. Also, dense planting was provided on the south side of the development to support screening of the outdoor livestock storage from motorists on Township Road 244. Stormwater management plan was prepared. The parcel contains a tributary to the Western Irrigation District. As such, it is assumed that runoff from the developed areas must be managed such that there is no surface runoff in events less extreme than a 100-year return period. As the subject parcel contains significant depressions that can retain stormwater during a 100-year event, this requirement has been met. There is no surface discharge from the site for the period of record and from the 100-year 24-hour design storm event. Lot grading of the site has been designed to support no surface discharge of stormwater in events less extreme than the 100-year 24-hour design storm event. The building is proposed to initially provide water via a holding tank. The landowner applicant engaged a third-party civil engineer to size the temporary holding tank based on the maximum occupancy for the facility, 2,000 persons. It is intended to be pumped out after each event. Provisions have been made for a potable water cistern and raw water tank to support truck-in water considerations for facility operations. Potable and water tank volumes are a function of mechanical design and will be confirmed during the detailed building design stages at building permit submission. The initial wastewater design proposes the use of holding tanks with the potential for a soil-based disposal system to be installed in the future. Future design for effluent dispersal is to be provided subsequently based on actual usage. The site is large with ample areas available for future effluent dispersal. Fire suppression, the development is proposing fire ponds to be located on site which are not required for stormwater flow control. They are designed to capture and store water for fire protection. To reduce the necessity for top-up, the area draining to them has been maximized. Specifics pertaining to building classifications, location of firewalls, and building requirements will be described at the time of building permit application. There were plans that are going to be required as conditions of this development permit, which is a construction management plan, a lighting plan, a manure management plan, and an emergency response plan. Staff's recommendation is found on page 178. Staff's recommendation considered the alignment of this application with the municipal development plan objectives and land use bylaw requirements, which have been outlined in the policy analysis section of this report. Improvements to the offsite road network are required to accommodate any additional traffic. Comprehensive landscaping will be constructed on site. Lot grading has been designed to support no surface discharge of stormwater. Wastewater design will utilize pump-out tanks with a potential future effluent dispersal system. Potable water cistern and raw water tanks will be provided to support truck-in water, and noise impacts are mitigated by events and activities occurring indoors and specific rules regarding the overnight stay area. So staff have recommended that council conditionally approve DP 2024-033 for a multi-use event and cultural center subject to the conditions, the 29 conditions, which are found on pages 178 to 183. The conditions have been divided into categories outlining the sequence of when they are to be completed and provide a one-year time frame for completion, at which the time the DP would be issued. If the development permit is not issued by September 3rd, 2025, or extended through an approved extension date, then this approval is null and void and the development permit shall not be issued. And council has the 3 standard response options to consider. That concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have questions.
Thank you. Questions from council?
This traffic impact study, how many vehicles are they counting?
Let me check in the report. I don't have that off the top of my head here.
Did they make any reference to any loaded vehicles? Like tankers, horse trailers?
They are saying estimated low volumes were analyzed consisting of 80 daily trips, including 5 full-time employees and high volume scenarios for large weekend events consisting of upwards of 2,000 attendees. I'm just seeing if I put in my notes if they were, what was the weight or the type of vehicle. I don't see that in my report. I'd have to look back at the TIA.
Okay, so that they make reference to, is that Range Road 250?
Yes.
Gravel road? How many trips on that?
Well, they are saying that intersection improvements at Range Road 250 and Township Road 244 were not warranted based on the analysis. I think they took into consideration both of the roads. So Township Road 244 and Range Road 250.
Okay, so my concern is that road is banned that goes across there. And so all the heavy traffic have to go on that gravel road. And I'm thinking there's going to be a considerable amount of traffic, water hauling, waste. Some of the heavy trailers will have to be on that road.
I can't respond to that. I do see that a member of our transportation department is here, and I'm not sure if he will be able to add any insight to that question. No, not at this time. Sorry. Put you on the spot, Cody.
Okay. I'm really thinking that road should be paved. It would alleviate a lot of pressure on the gravel roads and of course on the main road too.
So you're referring to Range Road 250 should be paved?
No, the oiled road, that's band road surface there.
Oh, okay.
Upgraded. I don't know who's gonna pay for it, but I think it has to be done.
My only response is that our transportation department has reviewed all the details of the application, and so has McElhaney Engineers, and that didn't come up as a recommendation. That's the only comment I can make on that.
And both our administration and our consulting engineers would be taking into account the servicing for the wastewater and water as well as livestock transport for, as the development was laid out, that would have been included in the development application.
Correct.
There was some reference in some of the letters that they haven't been spoken to. I remember during the public hearing, I had leg surgery then, so I phoned in, so I might have misunderstood. I don't think that the Ag Board was going to get in contact with all the neighbors, and then yet I see letters in the package here that they haven't been in contact with anyone yet. I'm just wondering if they're planning on rectifying that, or, but after we approve it, it's kind of late.
I can't speak to whether or not they did get in touch, but when I received all of these letters for this application, the applicant provided a document to address what they thought was the major comments, and I sent that document to each of the landowners, and that is as far as I know.
Okay.
This question on a similar vein, is there any way that that administration can verify that all the people to be notified from the public hearing, which was held last year, I believe, that they were actually notified? Because there has been some discussion that not everybody received a notification of that the public hearing was going. And I understand this is sort of the horses out of the barn, but I think it's a question that need to be addressed if we can address it.
We did circulate a little bit more within the town boundaries. We circulated the same distance within the county boundaries, which was 1 mile. And I did hear reference that somebody thought they weren't circulated at the redesignation, and I did check that particular name, and they were and had provided letters in response to both the redesignation and the development permit application. I don't know, I didn't check every name, but they're on the list. We use the same circulation area.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification for the development officer. Could you just describe the process that administration undertakes when we do provide those mailouts, just through the Esri and the mailout list?
Sure. So on our GIS mapping system, we put in a particular location and we say the radius of what we want circulated. And so I chose a mile, so it pulled all of the names within a mile and puts them on a spreadsheet, and all of their addresses and everything come from our tax roll. The addresses are updated based on land titles. Whatever's on their land title goes in our tax roll. And so that's what goes on our spreadsheet, and that's what goes on the letters that are mailed out.
So if you haven't updated your mailing address, you wouldn't be able to get a hold of them.
Yeah, if they don't update their land titles, then our system doesn't get updated.
Any other questions? Councillor Kester?
I know that's the way it's working out. This is the way the county's done it. It's a direct control. And all direct controls come to the council. There's lots of people here today that think they come for the public hearing too. But the public hearing has no conditions. And if this was a normal, not a normal development, 99% of our developments, it would go to MPC. And if the individuals don't like it, they are capable in some cases of doing an appeal. There is no appeal today. None. Council's decision is final. And yet, I know if I was living on that road, being a farmer and stuff, I don't know when I'm moving the machinery down the road. And if I've got 2,000 people trying to get into that approach, I don't know who's going to win. And I would be in favor of allowing comments today from the public. We can make a special exception. And I want to make sure all the comments are answered. I don't need to have people coming in after the fact complaining that the road needs widening or another lane, or I just want to hear it.
Can administration speak to the appeal process for development permits for a direct control district issued for discretionary uses by council?
The
Or
municipal
permitted use by a development officer?
The Municipal Government Act says that any decision made by council is not appealable. So because direct control district decisions come to council, then they're not subject to an appeal.
Is there a provision where if there was a lack of procedural fairness that it could be appealed? Like on procedure, but not on merit, if my understanding is correct?
I believe so. It can go then to the Court of Appeal and the Provincial Court of Appeal.
So my concern with opening, like varying from our typical format for a development permit and permitting individual ratepayers or the proponent to speak is that I think it would compromise procedural fairness and would actually compromise our decision making. And the reason being is that we didn't advertise this. It's not a public hearing. The government of Alberta is moving towards constraining municipal council's abilities to hold public hearings outside of when they are permitted. That's one of the pieces in Bill 20. And I do think that by the fact that we did not advertise and that the opening to speak would not be open to all potential parties, that it would compromise procedural fairness.
Would not be a public hearing. It would just be comments from attendees. Public can speak at council meetings with the permission of council. You don't call it a public hearing. We're not breaking council. It's all part of the council meeting. Public hearing is a separate issue. No, I don't want a public hearing, just allowance for comments.
Yeah, and I recognize that, and I recognize that council can hear from ratepayers. My concern is around the principles of justice and fairness, because there could be people that were either circulated or that would have comments that they wish to make, but that wasn't circulated to all of the public. And so we would be potentially hearing from a subset, and there could be either individuals for or with concerns or against the development permit that would not have an opportunity to speak. And I'm concerned about that from a procedural fairness perspective for council.
Question to administration. Can you explain what our procedure is if when we get complaints about roads deteriorating because of high use? We regularly assess roads in the county and decide if upgrades are required, if the use is beyond what is typical? Is that true, or?
I'd like to defer that question to Brad as the GM of the Transportation Department.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yes, we do. We keep a record of the roads, the conditions, the traffic counts. And we do prioritize roads for upgrades when needed and then present those to council during the budget time. Obviously, there's a lot of roads in the county that were built many years ago. And so, like I say, we just prioritize on those lists and bring those to council during budget.
Councillor Laverson.
I would like to hear from the members that are here, or the people that are here, sorry. It's not a public hearing, and I quite frankly don't have enough information based on what was given me in the package to make an informed decision. And if I don't make an informed decision, I might make the wrong decision. So I would like to hear from people.
Councillor Laverson, can you outline what information you require to make a decision?
Can you repeat that?
Can you outline what further information you require to make a decision?
I'd like to know how it's going to impact the area, but I think it's important to hear from the Ag Society as to why they chose this location and not another one. And if there's public concerns about it, I would like to hear that too. That's my personal opinion.
So looking for advice from administration.
Through the Reeve to council, at the public hearing, when this was done, that was the time when council heard all of the viewpoints from the applicant and from the public as to the suitability of the site for the proposed use. So at this time, once council found out through the technical reports that it was able to handle the transportation, the traffic, the wastewater, and the systems that they were proposing to use, they deemed it to be suitable for this purpose. Then at the development permit stage, what we're looking at is the conditions for the actual development. And then with the applicants, when they gave us the proposal, we circulated it again with more detail to the adjacent landowners. And when they submit their concerns, we take those concerns, and then Suzanne, the development officer, can address all of their concerns as she outlined what they were, and then how the applicant in this form, when they resubmitted, how they plan to mitigate those concerns. And so that's where we are with the proposed conditions are methods that would be to mitigate the concerns for dust, for the noise, for the traffic. And so if you'd like, the development officer can go through some of the concerns that were raised and what the proposed mitigation plans are.
I think it is important to recognize that we have received substantial correspondence with concerns. From my experience, this is probably the most substantive list of conditions that I've seen on a development permit. There's 5 pages of conditions. I did go through them very carefully and sort of align the concern with the mitigation that has been put in place by administration within the conditions. It might be prudent for administration just to walk through the concerns that were addressed in the correspondence that we've received, and then the mitigating conditions that will address those concerns. Some of the ones that I was looking at really carefully were around water and wastewater. And if we are confident as a council that that will be addressed through the proposal. And then if you could also outline if there are issues following, if the development permit were approved with the conditions if there are issues. And I think it was already asked, but if you can just elaborate a little bit further what our enforcement is. Say there was a manure management plan that was approved, but then there were some complaints following that with either odor or nuisance insects or things like that. If you can just outline how the enforcement process would work following if the development permit is issued.
So regarding, say, a manure management plan or something of that nature, that would be peer reviewed to make sure that it meets what we think will address the manure management issues. And then they have to abide by that manure management plan as the development proceeds. If there were complaints, we would probably compare it if they were operating in accordance with the approved plan. And if not, there is the potential the land use bylaw offers us, avenues to issue fines, or we can, there is the option to revoke the development permit or cancel the development permit, or issue fines would probably be more of the first step.
And then can you just walk through, so on page 192, there's a summary of concerns that were received from adjacent landowners, including traffic impacts, the water and wastewater management, the animal waste management, noise, dust control, security, and screening. Can you just outline, sort of tie those to the specific conditions that have been included in the recommendation?
Yes. So regarding traffic impacts, again, we have the conditions that are regarding dust control. We have new approaches that are going to be constructed. We have a left turn lane that will be added to Township Road 244. We have the intersection upgrade at Highway 817 and Township Road 244, which was even warranted prior to this development, according to the traffic impact assessment. And we're going to have upgraded illumination at that intersection, and at the intersection, we're going to have also illumination at George Freeman Trail and Township Road 244. We are going to, as I said, have dust control for 350 meters north of Township Road 244 on Range Road 250 to address any dust concerns. Water and waste water management. We just have the conditions that they must abide by the site servicing plan. So in our condition here, 20, so we're saying they must permanently, in perpetuity, abide by these plans. So one will be the manure management plan, which will be approved. One will be the stormwater management and site servicing plan. And the site servicing plan is where the details about the water cisterns and the tanked removal of septic will be included in those plans. Additionally, so those are being reviewed, they will have to follow those. That's been added to this condition. We have animal waste management. Yeah, we've discussed that. The noise. So we've addressed the noise. Mostly the idea is that most of the events will be indoors, so that should alleviate some of the noise as opposed to an outdoor arena. Also, we have the noise bylaw where we can address excessive noise that we think is beyond the parameters of this permit. The parking area where overnight stays are permitted has several conditions that are meant to address any noise impacts, such as even running generators or music or a specific quiet time. Dust control, as I mentioned, has been included in the transportation condition, and security and screening to all adjacent landowners. That will be included in the development agreement. They will have to complete their landscaping in accordance with the approved landscaping plan, and they have to provide securities of 125% of the estimated landscaping costs until the landscaping has been established and maintained for 1 year. Is there anything else that you would like me to address?
If you can just go into a bit more detail, is there any requirement, and I reviewed the landscaping plan, and it kind of looks like on 2 of the elevations, I might see fencing, but is there any fencing requirement, recognizing that there will be livestock on site and the biosecurity concerns that were raised?
We haven't included a fencing requirement. No, it is presumed that it will be fenced where there's any livestock, definitely. I don't know if the whole site will be fenced. We didn't require that, but where there is livestock, those areas are fenced.
What are council's thoughts on fencing? Councillor Kester, and then did you have a comment?
I think if there's camping, there's going to be animals too. And, you don't know where they come from. I think a fence would be appropriate around the campsite for sure. I think the arena hopefully has all the animals contained inside that. That makes sense to me. Even during the shows, people can be dogs on leashes and stuff too. That's a concern. And while I still got the mic, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. You said 80 vehicles a day?
On average, yes.
Or an average? Okay, so that's taken into account the 2,000 people that are getting there on weekends? Because that's going to take a couple more cars than 80.
Correct.
How many vehicles on those days did they say?
I would have to look at that.
I think they estimated 1 vehicle per 2.5 people was in the report, I believe. And they did do the high volume events at 2,000.
So some days will be 2,000 vehicles on that road, I'm thinking.
If everybody drove separately.
That's a lot.
Can you also speak specifically to stormwater?
Yeah, so what the stormwater management plan was saying was that there are depressions in the land, natural depressions, and that they don't expect any of the stormwater will be released from the site unless it was like a 1 in 100 year storm event. I'm just seeing if there's any other conditions. Yeah, there's a tributary to the WID, so it is assumed that runoff from the development areas must be managed so there is no surface runoffs and events less extreme than 100-year event. There are significant depressions that can retain stormwater. This requirement has been met. No surface discharge from the site within the period of record and from the 100-year design storm event. So the lot grading has been designed to support no surface discharge of stormwater in events less extreme than the 100-year event. Additionally, they are grading the site, so some of the water will go to the fire ponds.
And that's all been analyzed by our engineering consultant.
Correct. The
And
site
again-
servicing plan, which includes the fire pond design, is still under review by McElhaney, and they are going back and forth and finalizing those reviews.
But that's also a condition.
Yes, that's been added as a condition.
And again, if there were concerns either from the WID or from adjacent landowners with discharge of stormwater onto their land, that would be enforceable based on the conditions that are in the development permit.
Yes, it would.
And then just for clarity, the turning lane and the transportation upgrades that are required, those would be all at the developer expense. That would not be taxpayer dollars that would be funding the turning lane. I shouldn't say there won't be any taxpayer dollars. I understand there's an MOU with the town of Strathmore and there could be some shared, this is a little bit of a different, obviously, application given that it's a nonprofit community group, but specifically the turning lane in Wheatland County, is that at the developer expense?
Yes, that's been added into the development agreement condition.
The water and the wastewater, they are figured on, are computed on maximum, like 2,000 people, 300 horses, X amount of campers and all that kind of stuff. That is what the water and wastewater system is designed to take. So they're going to have freshwater cisterns that are big enough to manage these people, and then they'll have wastewater cisterns or septic tanks, whatever, to support those kind of, so it's always the maximum number that, like, because you don't need it for the 80 people that are there during the week. You need one size, but if you're, so I just need clarification that the water and wastewater system are designed for peak maximum attendance.
Yes, that was the design, was for the 2,000 attendee events for both the water tank supply and for the waste management as well. And they indicated that they would be, removing the waste from the tanks after each event.
And just for clarity, there's, and I know it's in the report, but just to confirm, there's no approval of using well water for the development. There's a potential for a proposed different effluent system for the wastewater, but the current conditions do not contemplate any well use.
That is correct. The site servicing plan is included in the conditions, and that does not contemplate well water.
Through the Reeve to Council, I'd like to clarify a little on the traffic volume that was mentioned about the 2,000 on every, it's not going to be every weekend that high volume. In the TIA, they mention large events and small events. The larger events will have a higher volume, but there will be smaller events that wouldn't generate that much traffic. So it does fluctuate depending on what they schedule for events, whether it's an indoor event, a concert, or just a performing theater group. So it will vary.
I know I'm just, when I'm planning to store my grain, I only get this much, but if I get too much, it spills over and I'm in trouble.
Would council be open to seeing?
One more question.
Certainly.
Clarification. I can't remember passing a conditionally approved development permit. Can you walk, when does it become not conditionally anymore?
So we have done a few of these. It's kind of a new approach that we've recently begun doing on some applications. So the conditions are, it's conditionally approved, similar to a subdivision. Once they reach all their conditions have been met, then we issue the permit. So it's approved in principle. They have 1 year to complete all their conditions. And once those conditions are met, then it will be issued. Yeah.
Yes. Dude, I actually have numbers that I can give you for weekend small events. The TIA mentioned 80 vehicles. Large participant events were 350 vehicles, and weekend professional events were 2,000 attendees.
Would council be open to seeing a condition regarding fencing? Could we perhaps recess for 5 minutes and give administration some time to draft a condition regarding fencing? My preference would be to see the entire site. I realize it's a very large site, but that's one concern that through my review, we have not necessarily contemplated or addressed through conditions. Let's recess for 5 minutes and reconvene at 11. It depends which screen I'm looking at. This one says 11:37. Let's go 11:43. We'll reconvene. Good morning. We'll call the meeting back to order. Does administration have a proposed condition for council to consider?
Yes, we do. So we have already discussed condition 30 that will be added, and condition 31 we've drafted to say the landowner applicant is to provide an engagement summary documenting communication with concerned landowners and responses received. Does that meet the requirement?
Do we want to delineate a radius, or are we intending it for it to be the landowners we've received correspondence from today?
Okay. And responses received, okay. Communication with concerned landowners who have
within a 1 mile radius, can you say? Because that would include everybody that was circulated.
Through the Reeved Council, this was in response to residents who submitted concerns.
Okay.
Okay, so concerned landowners who submitted concerns. That's what we want to say?
With concerns submitted for the development, like within today's package, or like something just super clear. An engagement summary with concerned.
I wouldn't make you just say adjacent landowners. But there will be other people on the roads.
Does that meet what you're thinking, Councillor Custer?
Yeah, I could go with that.
Just use your microphone. Okay, is everybody clear? So we have 2 potential additions for conditions.
Through the chair, I did also have a question that I would like to address when you have a moment.
Please proceed.
I had a question regarding why is a particular parcel of land designated as a direct control district? And the reason is when there is a mix of uses that do not fit within any of the districts we currently have in our land use bylaw, then a direct control district is drafted and it is passed by a bylaw with the public hearing process. So that's why. It's because just the mix of uses on this for this proposal didn't fit anywhere within our land use bylaw districts.
Yeah, and just for the public, we do try and really limit the use of direct control, but there are complex applications where we just can't fit them within our current land uses, and then it needs to come as a direct control, particularly for those mixed uses. But we do try and limit that. But we do always have a public hearing when that redesignation occurs, which did happen with this in June of 2022. Just some high-level comments as well. There were questions raised around potential other sites for this development. That's outside of council's scope of decision-making today. We do support exploring opportunities and optimizing developments, and particularly with an organization like this for our community. And we would continue to do that. But the question before us today is the application that has been submitted. We need to evaluate that submission based on the merits of that submission alone. It doesn't mean the Ag Society can't explore other options or, you know, look at other things, but we're contemplating the application that's before us today. And I think we just have to focus on, that's our responsibility. We do support exploring other opportunities as well. But I know that was raised as well in some of the letters. And so this doesn't preclude continued exploration of that. If, say, there was donation of land somewhere and it was too good of a deal to pass up for the Strathmore District Agricultural Society, that's completely within the jurisdiction of that board and their decision-making where they want to cite something. We only have jurisdiction over applications that come to us. Just wanted to clarify that as well.
I think that this development permit, given that it's conditionally approved and that we have 31 conditions associated with it, just shows the dedication of our administration to try and mitigate as many of these concerns as can be mitigated. And I think they've done an amazing job of trying to address the issues that are raised. So kudos to our admin.
Just got a question on 31, and this is just, should there be acknowledgement of the original 1 mile circulation? Like, I'm just as opposed to landowners, just like, because a lot of like I've heard a couple different, that people were not notified enough or so if the original 1 mile, to make sure that, to shine a light on those people that they're covered. It's just, that's.
Did you have communication that there was any lack within the 1 mile radius for notification for the development permit? Because I didn't receive any concerns with the development permit circulation. I received a concern regarding
Yeah, exactly, but that would be
or the redesignation circulation.
Right, yeah, I heard it on the public inquiry, or the public
hearing for the redesignation.
Right, that's where I've heard the concerns. I just want to make sure that we can address this. People can at least have their.
The individual that I heard that did not receive circulation for the public hearing for the redesignation in 2022 did receive circulation for the development permit.
Yes.
So then that should be addressed. I have not had any concerns raised that now there is always a chance that if they weren't circulated, if there was an address change that wasn't registered or something like that, that they might not even know to reach out with a concern that they weren't circulated. But the resident that I spoke to that was not circulated for the redesignation did receive it for this one. So that is captured. Unless anybody received any word from people within the radius that did not receive their circulation. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? I guess just another high level comment. We are always cognizant about fragmentation of agricultural land, and unfortunately it does happen with development. We do try and direct that into area structure plans that are already established for industrial or commercial use so that we minimize that fragmentation of agricultural land. I think this is a unique consideration with this application, given that I truly believe that this actually supports sustainability of agriculture in our region, particularly with the inclusion of the practical ranching school, but also just with continuing to highlight our Western way of life and being able to celebrate the culture that really is foundational to Wheatland County and to our agricultural industry and our Western heritage. So I am cognizant that we are losing, thankfully with this application, a relatively small amount of farmland, but I do acknowledge that we are losing some farmland. But I think it's always those competing principles, and I do think that this will actually contribute to the long-term sustainability of agriculture and having strong agricultural producers and employees that will provide labor for those agricultural producers as well. Any other questions or discussion? Council's wishes.
I agree with Shannon LaPriest that the staff's done an awesome job with the 31 conditions. I think they've covered everything, and I trust that the society will be a good neighbor. So with that, I'll move that council conditionally approve DP 2024-033 for a multi-use event and cultural center subject to the following conditions from 1 to 31.
So just for clarity, it will include the 29 that were included in the original RFD, in addition to 30 and 31 that were put on the screen by administration as additions to the recommendation. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. I want to thank administration for their work on this file. Let's take a recess and reconvene. Is 12:45 okay with everybody? Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order. And we'll start with agenda item 8.34.
Good afternoon, Council. Sherry Bars with administration to present the Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarship Report, which is found on page 218 of the agenda package. The Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarship is committed to supporting students in Wheatland County schools by offering at least one university or college scholarship each year. This scholarship rewards high-achieving students pursuing studies in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. After a thorough review by Wheatland Wind representatives and county administration, it was recommended that council approve awarding two $2,000 scholarships to the following students: Samantha Monroe and Carly Clark. That concludes my presentation, and the motion is found on page 218 for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? If there's no questions, council's wishes.
I move that council approve two Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarships in the amount of $2,000 each to Samantha Monroe and Carly Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.41.
Good afternoon, Council. Brad Bullock presenting from administration, the August 2024 Transportation and Agriculture Department report on page 2221 of the agenda. The first couple pages are a summary of some of the road projects that are happening in the county right now and the progress of those and the anticipated completion dates. Following that, a summary of some of the operational activities happening within the county. And then following that on page 224, a summary of the agriculture environment activities. And then, of course, following that, a more detailed report of the various capital projects and operational activities being completed within the department currently. And that concludes my report, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the Transportation and Agriculture Department report? If there's no questions, council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the August 2024 Transportation and Agricultural Department report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any discussion? I'll call the question. My computer has frozen. It's still frozen. My apologies, my computer has decided to restart. I vote in favor. Perfect, thank you. My apologies. Motion is carried. Let's move to agenda item 8.42.
Good afternoon, Council. Cody Zimmerman with administration, presenting the gravel stockpile site lease renewals. Wheelan County maintains a network of aggregate stockpile sites throughout the county for the facilitation of general road maintenance activities. The use of stockpile sites is required in order to provide efficient and effective service in the distribution of gravel to maintain county roadways. During the winter months, assorted aggregates, primarily gravel, are hauled from county-operated gravel pits and are stockpiled at these various locations to be used throughout the remainder of the year. Stockpile sites are strategically located throughout the county to service areas that cannot be efficiently serviced directly from a gravel pit. The locations of each site is based on a variety of factors such as road network access, location and size of the service area, and to avoid or limit the need for backhauling as much as possible. Some of these locations are owned and operated by the county, and in areas where the county does not have land available, the county will approach landowners within the desired area to establish a lease for a stockpile location. A map of current stockpile and gravel pit service areas has been provided for reference with the report. There are currently 9 stockpile locations utilized by the county for road graveling purposes, with 6 of these locations situated on leased land. These lands are currently leased at a rate of $5.25 per acre per year, equating to a total value of $10,500 per year for all locations. Leases for all locations are set to expire at the end of this year, with a review of the overall size of the leased area, along with a market valuation of the lease rates, was completed prior to approaching landowners regarding lease renewals for each location. A rate of $600 per acre was offered and accepted in all cases, equating to a new total lease value of $12,540, a variance of $2,040 annually from the previous 5-year term. If approved by council, the new 5-year term for all 6 leases would commence on January 1st, 2025. And additionally, a template of the lease agreements has been attached to the report as well. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council authorize the Reeve and CAO to sign the gravel stockpile lease agreement renewals to commence on January 1st, 2025 for portions of the lands located at Southwest 33, 27, 24 west of the 4th, Northwest 11, 28, 23 west of the 4th, Northeast 36, 25, 23 west of the 4th, Southeast 1, 25, 21 west of the 4th, and Northwest 22, 23, 20 west of the 4th, and Southeast 10, 27, 19 west of the 4th, for the purposes of aggregate stockpiling for road maintenance activities.
Thank you, Councillor Freese. Any discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 10. Yeah, agenda item 10, and I will move us into a closed session. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Good afternoon. I will move us out of closed session and call the question.
I'll do it. I'll do it. What's that?
Do you have your e-script? Open?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Oh, sorry. What's going on here? My bad. I'm good.
Motion is carried. And we have two motions arising.
I'll move the council direct its appointed proxy representatives for the Wheatland Regional Corporation 2024 Annual General Meeting to present the following items during and direct administration to communicate these items to WRC administration prior to the next session of the WRC currently adjourned AGM. Recommendation to add to a provision to the WRC's unanimous shareholders agreement requiring final approval by shareholder voting before any new amended or repealed bylaw initiated by resolution of the Board of Directors comes into effect. Recommendation to add a clarifying cause or causes as needed to cause 1.11 of the USA describing the freedoms and limitations directors have with sharing WRC-related information with shareholders they represent, i.e. the Municipal Directors Council. Request to update Wheatland County's mailing address in the USA and in the corporate registry. Recommendation to add a provision to Bylaw 1 requiring that board meetings be distributed to all board members and shareholders at least 72 hours before each regular board meeting. And finally, inquire with the WRC legal representative to better understand how share transfers are required to be managed and approved by the shareholders.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just one point from administration. I believe we meant to update the 72 hours to 5 days. Just in that second last point. Recommendation to add a provision to Bylaw 1 requiring that board meeting minutes be distributed to all board members and shareholders at least 5 days before each regular board meeting.
And I think we want it to read agendas instead of minutes. Or agenda packages or something. Agenda packages.
Board meeting back.
In that fourth bullet.
Right.
So change minutes to agenda packages.
And change 72 to 5 days.
Perfect. Everybody sees the motion on your screens? Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Would a motion arising regarding organizational chart and pay grid changes?
I'll move that Wheatland County Council approve amendments to Alberta Human Resources Policy 6.2.1 Pay Structure and 6.4.1 Organizational Chart.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda today. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.